I think the liberal media, and I've been dealing with you a long time, need to get your head out of your butt, focus on the real issues.
The Brock Lawley Show. The news.
Here is an illustrated summary of the news.
Greetings from Washington. I want to thank all of you for your work to root out corruption that weakens economic development, feeds black markets and organized crime, and undermines the promise of democracy.
I believe in the oldest adage in American politics, which is follow the money.
A new report today claims that the Clinton Foundation gives about 10% of its money that it raises to actual charities.
Enormous amounts of money have flowed to the Clintons from foreign governments, foreign financiers, and businesses.
The Clinton Foundation dropping its self-imposed ban on collecting funds from foreign governments and entities.
You have a foreign corporation or a foreign government that wants something from the State Department while Hillary Clinton is Secretary of State. They will make a large payment to the Clinton Foundation. That will be followed by favorable action on their behalf. They've created a model for massive self-enrichment that allows you to go into so-called public service, but get extremely rich at the same time.
Oh, yeah. I got to pay our bills.
Before we had to worry about money from Wall Street and big labor. Now we have to worry about it coming from around the world and infecting our politics. With the Clintons, nothing is sacred.
MSNBC is a crack house for intravenous idiocy. He's your daily leftist detox counselor, your fearless host, Brock Lawley.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Brock Lawley program. My name is Brock Lawley. Let's tackle the news headlines together. Hillary's sending her aides out there. This is just getting desperate. By the way, we'll hit a story of this. I found this so startling, a headline, and so startling an article that I had to actually vet it. Turns out they were understating it. Hillary Clinton has not had a press conference in 6 months, not a single one in 2016. Clearly they are hiding this monstrosity. Just wrap your... The woman is running for president. Bernie Sanders will talk into one of those weird, cans, two cans with a string tied between it. If you let him talk about socialism, he's on the stump. It doesn't matter what kind of makeshift microphone. Hillary Clinton, invisible. Now, I ask you a question, my fellow American, my listener. If somebody enlisted you to run for president, and in some delusional, psychopathic state you agreed to do so, wouldn't the entire point be to move forward a platform to speak to the American people? Certainly, that's the only reason a sane person would ever run, right? Unless perhaps I offer you an alternative. Maybe the entire point is just power and self-enrichment. In which case, you would try to duck and sleek and slime and sneak. Doesn't help, by the way, that the woman opens her mouth and the American people hear nails on a chalkboard. Anyway, Hillary hiring vets to protest, sending her aides out to say, we didn't think anything of this Hillary Clinton email. We never thought anything of it. Thought it was totally on the up and up, totally okay. Yeah. Again, Hillary Clinton sending weird little monkey demons from the Wicked Witch of the West, just hurling them off like flights of bats. The New York Times the New York Times is cover to cover, just digging up salacious nonsense on Trump, and the bloody nose after the bloody nose. I think it was the Washington Post came out with that piece about his women the very next day completely taken apart, dismembered. Complete and total slander. The main woman they're quoting says they lied, they misquoted me, none of the stuff they're saying about Trump is true. Now they come out with this nonsense on Trump's his vets thing, which, by the way, I think has got to be the stupidest attack on Donald Trump I've ever seen. Everybody knows the guy's genuine about the vets. And I think this even on a political strategy. I mean, I'm talking about just if you're a political animal, she should fire her optics person, because all this does is just draw attention to the fact that Hillary Clinton's never given a red cent to the troops. Hillary Clinton has animosity towards the truth, and everybody knows it. So now there's just a police light spotlight on this whole thing. This was never going to pass the smell test with the American people. Donald Trump not liking the troops. Even when Donald Trump, the political chameleon that he clearly is, even when he was barking off whatever Donald Trump was barking off in the 80s and 90s, he was a supporter of his troops coming out of pocket with his own money. So this has got to be one of the biggest fail fests I've ever seen. But they're throwing everything at the kitchen sink. Everything but the kitchen sink. This is now it's more stuff on Trump University. Meanwhile, authoritarian president sits in the Oval Office. Trump's attack on the news media, ladies and gentlemen, I've never seen anything like this. I peruse the news every single day to try to bring this podcast to you. Plus, I have all kinds of backdoor sites from when I was a member of the scumbag media, of which I am ashamed. And I've never seen anything like this. They're beside themselves. How dare he touch us? How dare he is what they're saying. They're so beside themselves. I got to tell you, the road to the White House, let me tell you, if you want to build bridges politically, if you want to, bring a lot of different political players into the same sack, if you want to make interesting bedfellows politically, attack the media. I can't think of an entity in this society that is more universally hated than the media, and rightfully so. They are the poison in the veins. They are the cancer in the body. The media is the most awful, evil, duplicitous, less than scum entity in this body politic, in this culture we have. And when you attack them, it is nothing but solid gold. Trump, hear me if there's any chance this echoes into your ears. Every single day come with the haymakers at the media. Every day. Tear them down. Expose them. It is catnip. It is catnip to the American people. It is the yellow brick road to the White House. I'm just telling you, they are thunderstruck at these media outlets. And if you don't believe me, read this piece in the New York Times. Clinton supporters, by the way, out there, quoted in typical unbiased news fashion at the New York Times about how appalled they are that he would treat the media in such a way. By the way, a little secret, I went to journalism school. It's the media that should be attacking the powerful. You understand me? You understand me? The media's like, oh my gosh, is this going to be a civil relationship? Is this the way it's going to be, Donald? Is this the way it's going to be? Is there going to be all this hostility? Hey, Fourth Estate sycophant, it is your job to bring the holy rage of hell down upon anybody who holds power over free people. It is your job. You're not a cat licking up warm milk from your preferred power brokers. Moving on. Bernie Marcus, who used to be an anti-Trumper, has come around, baby. I'm with Trump now. Real Clear Politics has a piece. These guys are all coming around. Mark my words, they're all coming around. There's an absolutely amazing piece, I think. Victor Hansen, who, by the way, is just killing it in this entire election. I read Victor Hansen. And he has a piece about the elites, both left and right, by the way, and it's true, being out of touch, but it's much more nuanced than that, much more detailed than that. His finest piece, by the way, this is a true story. I'm going to break it up with this anecdote, and then I'll read you a segment of this piece. So one of my favorite social commentators is Dennis Prager. He's one of the wisest men walking this dust ball we call Earth. And he gives this thing about, it's a great analogy. He gives this thing, it's not mine, it's his, but it's brilliant, that a lot of these limousine liberals and these lefties, they're all trust fund babies. They're all rich. If you don't believe me, go. The richest parts of the country are liberal. The richest politicians in Washington are liberal. and they give the least amount of money. Look that up at starting. But nonetheless, that's not the point. So Prager's talking about how most of these guys live in gated communities, and this really rings true for me because when I was in college, my professors would give me lecture after lecture after lecture after lecture about, also about being racist and how we don't care about the poor man. And then I'd watch these guys turn around and drive into their highly protected video camera surveillance gated communities that they lived in. And Dennis Prager makes the brilliant point that, these lefties, are they xenophobic? Do they hate immigrants because they live in gated communities, right? The obvious glaring hypocrisy. Well, this is a true story. That very same late afternoon, I get to talking with one of my friends, just a hardcore leftist. I've known him for a really, really long time. And this guy's going off on Trump. And I'm just listening at this point. He's just going off on Trump. And with Trump, with these guys, most of these guys, like this guy's not a political animal. He's a lefty because he doesn't think about the world. That's generally the case in my experience. But this guy, particularly the case. And he's going on racist. Trump's a racist. Trump's a racist. How can America be so racist? Trump's a racist. He's a racist. I say to him, can you elaborate? Why do you feel the man's a racist? Well, the wall. He's a racist. The wall. He's a racist. I'm barely exaggerating. I mean, the word racist left his mouth like 12 times in a sentence. I'm not kidding you. We're having this conversation. Where me and this guy that I'm referring to are having this conversation in his home in a highly gated community. And ladies and gentlemen, I tell you that because they never think about this stuff. It doesn't even dawn on them to think this stuff through. It's not even a remote thought for them to give this a clear path of intellectual honesty. Does it make my friend a racist to live in a gated community? Well, certainly he wouldn't think so. But that in and of itself is his entire argument about Donald Trump's candidacy being rooted in racism, because the man wants to enforce sovereign law, by the way. I want to read to you a paragraph or two from this Hansen piece, because I think this is brilliant, and this really gets to the center of our political dynamic right now, why there is such a disconnect between Washington, D.C. and the average American. Ready? Listen to this. The National Rifle Association is running the most effective ads in its history, hitting elites who wish to cartel gun ownership on the part of those who cannot afford security blankets. People, concealing weapons. The security detail that guards Hillary Clinton, for example. The security detail that guards Barack Obama, for example. Why should not an inner city resident who wishes to buy a legal weapon have that privilege? By the way, he's way more at risk than is this trust fund baby, who, by the way, lives in a gated community. Why should he not be afforded that right? When armed security guards patrol America's elite, all the senators, the celebrities, all these cats that want to take your guns away and your right to protect yourself with a gun. By the way, I remember a little while ago, this is a true story, that one of the biggest anti-gun advocates in America has his house broken into, and in the police report, he pulled a gun on the robber. So these people, they have no credibility on any level. But I'm going to continue because this isn't really about guns; it's about elites. For most of Clinton's adult life, this is Bill and Hillary, they have been accompanied by men and women who conceal weapons to ensure their safety, on the premise that firearms, not mace, not tasers, not talking it out, not knives, not clubs, no guns, keep them safe and ensure their safety. Moving on. Fracking provides jobs, cheap fuel for most of the American people, for the rabble, if you will. The people that don't live in New York City and California. The elites of the Democratic Party care about neither. Indeed, Barack Obama and the Energy Secretary Stephen Chu proclaim their desire for spiraling gas prices and skyrocketing energy prices. Boutique environmentalism is losing its footing with the American favor. It's a losing issue for the Democratic Party. The very wealthy can afford to be more concerned about the 3-inch Delta smelt. But the average American, the farmer, he has to carry about irrigation and water, which meant, by the way, that now the left is depriving these farmers of. That will ensure their good jobs. That will ensure jobs for tractor drivers, seed providers, manufacturers, laborers, affordable food for the poor and the less well off. When Hillary Clinton talks about putting minors out of work, which she boldly proclaims, she's talking about real people. She has no desire to see them, to know them, to understand their plight until she needs their votes. Illegal immigration is another issue that offers class, leverage, and detachment. Middle-class Mexican Americans can afford to put their kids in private schools when local districts are overwhelmed with non-English speaking students that pour across the border, parentless, in poverty, trying to provide language education funding for 11 million more illegal immigrant children naturally comes at the expense of fewer safety net protections and education opportunities for members of that minority group who are already citizens. Just as driving down wages is a manifestation of these abysmal law-breaking policies. It's good for the employer, it's good for Hillary Clinton, it's good for the Democrats, but it's hardly good for the citizen who competes with the illegal alien for entry-level jobs. And what about lower middle-class communities that are overwhelmed with foreign nationals, with backgrounds never checked, pouring into this nation? Outsourcing jobs affects predominantly lower middle-class neighborhoods. No pundit on TV in an empty suit, no DC staffer, no trust fund baby, no New York lawyer is replaced by the illegal immigrant. Obamacare follows the exact same patterns. Elites who praise these policies, these abysmal, obvious, on their face failure policies, they don't have to worry about this because they have these Cadillac plans. In fact, Congress legislated them out of the consequences of this. Rahm Emanuel and his brother aren't queuing up in surgery centers hoping to win 5 minutes with an optometrist who now treats 70 patients a day to survive under Obamacare's horrendous medical facility destruction policies. The entire establishment, both political parties, are losing touch with reality, losing touch with the actual common man. Donald Trump is an unlikely candidate to point this out as he is a billionaire. But the middle class love him because he understands. He gets it. He exploits that detachment. And it's so true, my fellow Americans. That is the explanation. That is why he resonates. And that is why I predict he'll win. Moving on from that story, ladies and gentlemen, I just thought you should hear that. It's an eloquent and very fact-based understanding of the gap. It's not an income gap that's destroying the American people. It's a gap between the leadership, the people that govern over them, and their understanding of who they govern. Ladies and gentlemen, the French Jews are leaving Paris by the thousands because of rampant anti-Semitism. It is everywhere, and it is from the left. Times of Israel reporting that. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been to France 2 times. This culture is hilarious. So they're tearing the whole country apart during the tourist season, by the way. I can't even imagine the money the country's losing, and they're already broke.